An 8-year-old boy named Eli Whitfield, blind since birth from a rare genetic condition called Leber congenital amaurosis, walked onto the Family Feud stage on September 9, 2025, holding his white cane in his right hand and his mother Danielle's hand in his left. And during a routine moment between rounds, while Steve Harvey was joking with the older players, Eli let go of his mother's hand, took 3 careful steps toward the sound of Steve's voice, and said into the open studio, "Mr. Steve, can I ask you something?" Steve crouched down. Eli leaned in close to Steve's ear and said 9 words at a volume the boom mic still caught. "I just want to see my mama's face once." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey did not stand up. He did not move. He stayed on one knee in front of an 8-year-old who had never seen the woman who had been carrying him through the world for 8 years. And then Steve Harvey put his forehead against Eli's forehead and broke. Not a single tear. He broke completely. The cameras kept rolling because no one in the booth could move to stop them. And every adult in that studio later said the same thing, that they had not known a sound like the one Steve Harvey made could come out of a grown man on national television. The Whitfield family had been booked on the September taping as part of a special Children's Hospital Partnership episode. Danielle Whitfield, 36, was a single mother from a town called Selma, North Carolina, where she worked as a unit secretary at a regional medical center 45 minutes from her home. She had 2 children, Eli, the older one, 8 years old, and his sister Mia, 6, who was sighted. The Whitfield family team for the show consisted of Danielle, her mother Patricia, who was 64, her younger brother Andre, who was 31, her best friend Keisha, who was 35, and had been listed as honorary aunt on the family paperwork, and Eli himself, who had insisted on being part of the team. Mia had been deemed too young by the production team. She had stayed home in Selma with her great-grandmother. Eli had been told he could be on the show with his mama. That was the only condition under which he had agreed to fly to Atlanta. He had never been on an airplane before. He had never been further than Raleigh. Leber congenital amaurosis is a recessive genetic disorder that affects roughly 2 in every 100,000 live births. It is caused by mutations in any one of more than 20 different genes responsible for retinal development. Children born with LCA are typically blind from birth or near birth. Eli's specific mutation was in the RPE65 gene, a mutation that, in the year 2017, 8 months before Eli was born, had become the first inherited form of blindness in human history with an FDA-approved gene therapy treatment. The drug was called Luxturna. It was a single injection treatment, 1 injection per eye, that delivered a corrected copy of the RPE65 gene directly into the retina. The clinical trials had shown that most patients gained functional vision within 30 days. Not perfect vision, not the vision of a sighted person, but vision. Enough to see faces, enough to see colors, enough to navigate a room without a cane, enough for an 8-year-old to see his mother. The price of Luxturna, at the time Eli was diagnosed in 2018 at 14 months of age, was $850,000 per eye. $1,700,000 for both. Danielle Whitfield had been 28 years old. She had been a unit secretary making $19 an hour. Eli's father, a man named Cameron, who had not been a husband and would not be a father, had been gone since the 2nd trimester. Danielle had insurance through her employer. The insurance covered medically necessary procedures. Luxturna was classified as medically necessary by the FDA. The insurance carrier classified it as experimental, despite the FDA approval and denied the pre-authorization. Danielle had filed an appeal. The appeal was denied. She had filed a second appeal. The second appeal was denied. She had hired a patient advocate through a nonprofit. The patient advocate had filed a third-level appeal. The third-level appeal was sent to an independent review board, which, after 14 months of paperwork, had ruled in Danielle's favor and ordered the insurance company to cover the procedure. The insurance company had then immediately initiated a new internal review on the grounds that Eli's age, by then 3 years old, had crossed a developmental window after which the treatment's efficacy might be reduced, and had denied coverage again on those new grounds. Danielle had filed another appeal. The cycle had started again. By the time Eli was 5, the family had been in continuous insurance appeals for 4 years. By the time he was 6, Danielle had stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. By the time he was 7, she had stopped opening the mail. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen. The Whitfield household ran on a budget of $41,000 a year, and the prayer that Danielle's car would not break down in any given week. Patricia, Danielle's mother, lived 3 blocks away in a small house and helped with the children every weekday. Andre, her brother, drove a delivery truck for a beverage company in Wilson and stopped by every Sunday for dinner. Keisha was a kindergarten teacher at Eli's school and had advocated for him at every IEP meeting for 3 years. Mia, his little sister, was the one who had taught Eli most of what he knew about color. Mia had been describing the world to him in detail since she was 3 years old. Mia knew that her brother's favorite color was yellow, even though he had never seen yellow, because Mia had described the sun to him one afternoon at age 4, and Eli had decided then and there that yellow was the best color anyone could pick. Eli had never asked his mother what she looked like. Not once. Not in 8 years. Danielle had waited for that question for 8 years. She had practiced what she would say. She had read articles online about how to describe yourself to a blind child. She had a paragraph memorized. The question had never come. Danielle had thought, for a long time, that this was a kindness her son was offering her, that he did not want her to feel like she was failing him, that he did not want to draw attention to the thing she had not been able to give him. She had been half right. The truth, which Eli would tell her 2 years later in a therapist's office, was that he had been afraid to ask. He had been afraid that asking would make her cry. He had heard his mother cry many times over the years, late at night, on the phone with the insurance company, at the kitchen table, opening mail. He had been afraid that asking would make her cry again. So he had not asked. What he had done instead, every night for the past 3 years, was put his hands on his mother's face before bed. He would run his small fingers across her forehead, her eyebrows, her cheekbones, her nose, her chin. He would memorize her shape. He would do this for 1 or 2 minutes every single night. Danielle thought it was a good-night ritual. She had not realized, until much later, that her son had been mapping her. He had been building a face in his mind out of touch and patience, because he could not build one out of light. The thing that Danielle had been carrying in silence for years was not the money. It was not the appeals. It was a specific window. A window the insurance company itself had cited in its 2020 denial, and which one ophthalmologist after another had quietly confirmed to her in hallways. Children with Eli's mutation had the best outcomes from Luxturna treatment when they received it before age 8. There was no hard cliff. There was no day on which the treatment stopped working, but the developing visual cortex worked best when given input early. The longer the brain went without visual signal, the more limited the recovery. Every ophthalmologist Danielle had ever spoken to had told her, in slightly different words, the same thing. Sooner is better. 8 is okay. 10 is harder. By 12, you start to lose the ceiling. Eli had turned 8 in March of 2025. Danielle had not slept more than 3 hours a night since his birthday. The window was closing. The insurance company had denied her 7th and final appeal in May. She had been told by the patient advocate that the only remaining option was a federal civil rights lawsuit under the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, which would take 3 to 5 years to resolve, and which the family would have to fund themselves at an estimated cost of $200,000. Danielle had $3,700 in savings. She had taken a second job, Friday and Saturday nights, working the overnight check-in desk at a hotel in Smithfield, and had been working 68 hours a week for 11 months. She had not told her mother. She had not told her brother. She had not told Keisha. She had told everyone she had simply started going to bed early on Friday and Saturday nights. The lie had worked for 9 months. Then Patricia, her mother, had stopped by the hotel one Friday night in February of 2025 to drop off a casserole for the night clerk, who was a member of Patricia's church. And Patricia had seen her own daughter behind the desk, in a hotel uniform she did not own. Patricia had not said a word. She had handed over the casserole, smiled, and walked back to her car. She had sat in her car in the hotel parking lot and cried for 40 minutes. She had not told Danielle she knew, and that wasn't even the part that made Steve cry. What broke Danielle, finally, was Mia. 6-year-old Mia, the sighted sister, the one who had been describing the world to her brother since she could talk. On a Tuesday evening in July of 2025, Mia had come into the kitchen while Danielle was washing dishes and had asked her mother a question. Mia had asked, "Mama, what does Eli look like in his head when he thinks about you?" Danielle had stopped washing the dish in her hand. She had said, "I don't know, baby. I don't know what Eli sees in his head." Mia had said, "I asked him. He told me." Danielle had turned to face her daughter. She had said, "What did he tell you?" Mia had said, "He told me he thinks you have yellow hair, because you smell like sunshine." Danielle had not been able to speak. She had been holding a soapy plate. Mia had said, "Mama, your hair isn't yellow, it's brown." Danielle had said, "I know, baby." Mia had said, "Should I tell him?" Danielle had said, "No, baby, not yet." Mia had said, "Mama, why don't we just get him the medicine? The medicine that makes blind kids see. The one Ms. Keisha told me about." Danielle had set the plate down. She had crouched in front of her 6-year-old daughter on the kitchen floor. She had said, "Mia, that medicine is very expensive, baby. Mama is trying. Mama is trying very hard." Mia had said, "How expensive?" Danielle had said, "More than this house costs, baby." Mia had been quiet for a long moment. Then Mia had said something Danielle would carry for the next 2 months. Mia had said, "Mama, I'll sell my piano. I'll sell my bike. I'll sell my dollhouse. I'll sell all my stuff. Eli should get to see your face. He's been asking me what you look like since I was a baby." Danielle had put her face in her hands on the kitchen floor, and she had cried in front of her 6-year-old for the first time in 6 years. She had cried because Eli had been asking. He had been asking Mia. He had never been asking her because he was protecting her, but he had been asking. He had been asking a 6-year-old to tell him what his own mother looked like, and a 6-year-old had been answering as best she could, and a 6-year-old had been carrying this for him because he could not bring himself to put it on his mother. That night, Danielle had walked into Eli's bedroom at midnight. He had been asleep. She had sat on the edge of his bed. She had put her hand on his small back. She had whispered, Mama is going to figure it out, baby, I promise you. Mama is going to figure it out. Eli had not woken up. He had only turned in his sleep and reached for her hand. But the real story hadn't even started yet. The Family Feud application had not been Danielle's idea. It had been Keisha's. Keisha had filled out the application in March of 2025 without telling Danielle, on the grounds that the family was funny, that they would do well, and that the $20,000 prize for winning would make a real dent in the legal fund. The callback had come in May. The family had been booked for the September 9th taping. Danielle had agreed because she did not know what else to do, and because Eli, when told he might get to be on Mr. Steve's show, had clapped his hands and said, "Mama, Mr. Steve is the funniest man on the radio. Can he be funny in person?" Eli listened to Steve Harvey's morning radio show on Patricia's old transistor radio every weekday morning at the breakfast table. He had been doing this since he was 4 years old. He had memorized Steve's voice. He had memorized his laugh. He had imitated him for his sisters so accurately that Mia could not stop giggling. Eli, a blind boy who had never seen a single face in his entire life, knew Steve Harvey by sound the way other people knew their grandfather by sight. The morning of the taping, September 9th, 2025, Eli had woken up at 5:30 a.m. in the Atlanta hotel room. He had put on the polo shirt Danielle had laid out for him the night before. He had asked his mother 3 times to describe the studio. Danielle had described it. She had described the lights. She had described the audience. She had described the colors. Eli had nodded each time and said, "Okay, Mama, I'm ready." On the drive to the studio, he had asked one last question. He had asked, "Mama, what color shirt is Mr. Steve gonna wear?" Danielle had said, "I don't know, baby. We'll find out." Eli had said, "Okay, Mama." He had brought his white cane and a small stuffed dog named Biscuit that Patricia had given him for his 5th birthday. Biscuit was brown corduroy and missing one ear. Eli had been told he could not take Biscuit on stage. He had agreed. Biscuit had stayed in the green room with the production assistant, a young woman named Haley, who had promised to keep Biscuit safe. The taping had begun at 1 p.m. Steve Harvey had walked out. The audience had applauded. Eli had clapped his hands and tilted his head toward the sound. He had whispered to his mother, "Mama, he's wearing a blue suit." Danielle had looked at Steve. Steve was wearing a navy suit. She had said, "How did you know, baby?" Eli had said, "His voice sounded blue today, Mama." Danielle had not known what to say to that. She had squeezed his hand. Steve had introduced both teams. He had cracked a joke about Andre's beard. Andre had laughed. He had introduced Patricia, who had told Steve she had been listening to him on the radio since 1996, and that her grandson knew his laugh better than her own. Steve had said, "Well, where is the grandson?" Patricia had said, "He's right here, Mr. Harvey, the little one." Steve had turned. He had seen Eli standing at the end of the podium with his white cane. Steve's face had changed. He had walked over. He had crouched down on one knee. "Hello, young man, what's your name?" "Eli, sir." "Eli, how old are you?" "8, sir. I listen to you every morning." "Is that right?" "Yes, sir, at breakfast, on my grandma's radio. I do your laugh for my sister Mia." "Can I hear it?" Eli had done Steve Harvey's laugh. He had nailed it. The audience had laughed. Steve had laughed. He had said, "Son, that is the best impression of me I have ever heard in my life. I might have to take a lesson from you." Eli had grinned. He had ducked his head. He had said, "Mr. Steve?" "Yes, son?" "Can I ask you something later, when we're not on the show? Just a question." Steve had paused. He had looked at the boy. He had said, "Son, You can ask me anything anytime. Right now, if you want." Eli had thought about it for a long moment. He had said, "Maybe later, sir. I want to play the game first." "Okay, brother. Whenever you're ready." Steve had stood up. He had returned to the host station. He had started the first round. The Whitfield family had been playing against a team from Charleston, South Carolina. The Boykins family, 5 members. A grandfather named Reverend Earl Boykins, 68 years old, who was a retired pastor and who had been watching Eli the entire time with an expression on his face that suggested he already knew something was about to happen. The first round had gone normally. The Whitfields had won. The audience had applauded. The teams had walked to the second round, and in the transition between rounds, while Steve was making a joke to Patricia about something she had said, Eli had let go of Danielle's hand. He had taken 3 careful steps toward the sound of Steve's voice. He had said, "Mr. Steve, can I ask you something?" Steve had turned. He had seen the boy standing alone at the front of the stage with his cane. He had crouched down immediately. "Yes, son, what is it?" Eli had walked the last few steps. He had leaned in close to Steve's ear. He had cupped his hand around his mouth the way a child does when telling a secret. He had whispered. The boom mic operator had caught every word. "I just want to see my mama's face once." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey did not stand up. He did not pull back. He stayed on one knee. He looked at Eli. He looked past Eli's shoulder at Danielle, who had not heard the words but who could see her son's body language and who had already started crying. Steve put one hand on each of Eli's shoulders. He looked at the boy. He said, very quietly, "Son, tell me again, baby. Tell me what you just said." Eli said it again. Not in a whisper this time, in his normal, small voice. "I just want to see my mama's face one time, Mr. Steve. Just one time. I have never seen her. She has been my mama for 8 years, and I don't know what she looks like. There's a medicine. Ms. Keisha told me about it. It's called Luxturna. It costs more than our house. Mama can't pay for it. The insurance keeps saying no. I'm going to be 8.5 soon. Ms. Keisha said the medicine works better when you're little. I just want to see her, Mr. Steve. Just one time, before I'm too old." Steve Harvey put his forehead against Eli's forehead. He closed his eyes. His shoulders started shaking. He made a sound that the production crew would describe later as the sound of a grown man understanding, in 1 second, exactly what a child has been carrying for years. He did not cry tears at first. He just made the sound. Then the tears came. He did not let go of Eli's shoulders. He did not move his forehead. He stayed there, forehead to forehead with the boy, for what the time code later confirmed was 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The producer in the booth, a woman named Camille Brooks, did not cut. She had been at the show for 11 years. She had been there for Lily Mae Carver. She had been there for Amaya. She had been there for Marcus Devereaux. She had learned by now that the only correct response when Steve Harvey put his forehead against a child's forehead on her stage was to keep the cameras rolling and to put her hand over her own mouth and to let it happen. Danielle was on her knees on the stage. She had not walked there. She had simply gone down. Patricia was beside her, holding her shoulders. Andre and Keisha were standing behind them, both crying. The Boykins family, on their podium across the stage, were all crying. Reverend Earl Boykins had taken off his glasses and was wiping them with a handkerchief he was no longer trying to hide. When Steve finally lifted his head from Eli's forehead, his face was wet and his voice was completely steady. "Eli, brother, look at me with your ears. I want you to hear me." "Yes, sir." "You are going to see your mama. You hear me? You are going to see her. You are going to see her face. You are going to see her hair. You are going to see her smile. You are going to see her cry tears of joy when she sees you see her. You are going to see your sister Mia. You are going to see your grandma Patricia. You are going to see your uncle Andre. You are going to see Ms. Keisha. You are going to see the sun. You are going to see yellow. You are going to see every yellow thing on this earth. You hear me? Yes, sir. You are going to see, son. I promise you. I am making you a promise right now on this stage, and I do not break promises to children. You hear me? Yes, sir. Now I want you to do one thing for me, brother. Can you do one thing for me? Yes, sir. I want you to go put your hands on your mama's face. Right now. Do what you do every night. Go map her. Because the next time you do it, you will be doing it with 2 eyes. And I want you to remember what she feels like one last time before you know what she looks like. You hear me? Eli nodded. He turned. He walked carefully to where his mother was kneeling. He found her face with his hands. Danielle held still. Eli ran his small fingers over her forehead, her eyebrows, her cheekbones, her nose, her chin, the way he had done every night for 3 years. Danielle did not breathe. Eli leaned in. He kissed her on the nose. He said, "Mama, Mr. Steve said I'm going to see you." Danielle could not speak. She put her arms around her son and held him. The studio fell silent again. But Steve wasn't done. He pulled out his phone. He sat down on the edge of the stage. The cameras stayed on him. The crew did not move. He dialed a number. Speakerphone. The call connected on the 3rd ring. "This is Dr. Albert McGuire. Dr. Albert McGuire is one of the 2 ophthalmologists who developed Luxturna at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He had performed the first injections in the original 2007 clinical trial. His phone number was not public. He had been on a foundation board with Steve Harvey for 6 years. "Albert, it's Steve. I need a favor." "Steve, anything." "I got an 8-year-old on my stage in Atlanta, RPE65 mutation, confirmed diagnosis. Insurance has been denying Luxturna since he was 14 months old. 7 appeals. The window is closing. I need him in Philadelphia next week. I am paying for everything personally, travel, lodging for the family, the procedure, the post-op care, anything they need for the next year. I need you to do this. I need you to do this fast. Steve, get him on a plane. I will see him on Monday. We will be operating within 10 days. Albert, thank you, brother. Steve, put the mother on the line. Steve held out the phone. Danielle stood up on shaking legs. She walked over. She took the phone. She said, "Hello?" Dr. McGuire said, "Ma'am, my name is Dr. Albert McGuire. I am one of the doctors who created the medicine your son needs. I have been doing this for 18 years. Your son is going to receive Luxturna. You do not have to do anything except get on a plane. My team will handle everything. We will see you Monday. Your son is going to see your face. I want you to hear me say it out loud. Your son is going to see your face. Are you hearing me, ma'am?" Danielle was sobbing into the phone. She could not answer. Dr. McGuire said, "Ma'am, you have done everything right for 8 years. You can let somebody else take the next step. I have got you. We have got you. Bring him to me." Danielle said the only thing she could say. She said, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Steve took the phone back. He said, "Albert, I love you, brother." Dr. McGuire said, "Steve, the honor is mine." Steve hung up. But Steve wasn't done. He made one more call. He called a woman named Renee Hollins, who was the CEO of a foundation Steve had funded for 6 years. He put it on speakerphone again. "Renee, new program, today. Children with rare diseases who have FDA-approved treatments their insurance is denying as experimental. Every child, every family. We are going to fund the treatments directly out of the foundation. We are going to fund the legal fights. We are going to fund the travel. We are going to fund the second medical opinions. We are calling it Eli's Window, after a little boy who knew exactly how much time he had left to see his mama's face. Renee said, "Steve, I will have the announcement ready by Monday." "Thank you, sister." Steve hung up. He turned to the camera, the main camera. Eli was holding his mother's hand again, standing beside her in front of the kneeling position they had occupied on the stage. To every parent in this country who is right now sitting at a kitchen table with a denial letter from an insurance company, who is right now telling their child for the 7th time that mama is trying, who is right now choosing between rent and a copay, who is right now opening a piece of mail at midnight that says the word experimental for a drug that the FDA approved 5 years ago. I want you to hear me. Starting today, Eli's Window exists for you. We are going to walk with you. We are going to pay for what your insurance will not pay for. We are going to fight the appeals you cannot fight. And we are going to make sure your child sees what they were always supposed to see. He looked back at Eli. "You are not alone, baby. You never were. We just took too long to find you." The studio fell completely silent for the last time that day. The Boykins family came across the stage. Reverend Earl Boykins, 68 years old, walked up to Eli. He crouched down the way Steve had crouched down. He took Eli's small hand in his big one. He said, "Son, my grandbaby died when he was 2 years old of a thing the doctors said they couldn't fix. I have prayed for 31 years that another child somewhere would get the chance my baby didn't get. I am going to tell you something, Eli. The Lord heard me today. The Lord heard me through you. You are going to see your mama, and when you do, you tell her that an old preacher in South Carolina has been praying for 31 years, and you are the answer." He kissed the top of Eli's head. He stood up. He walked back to his team. His wife, a woman named Perline, was already wiping his face with the same handkerchief. The clip aired in expanded form on September 23, 2025. The Whitfield family had given full consent. Eli had been told the world was going to see the moment. And Eli had said, "Okay, but only if it helps another kid like me see his mama too." The clip was 28 minutes long. It had no music. Within 4 days it had crossed 290 million views. Within 2 weeks, it was at 480 million. The hashtag Eli's Window trended for 19 days in 47 countries. Donations to the foundation passed $31 million in the first month. Eli's Window launched formal programming in 12 states within 90 days. By the end of the year, it had funded the treatments or legal advocacy of over 2,200 children with rare diseases denied coverage by their insurance carriers. The Whitfield family flew to Philadelphia on Sunday, September 14th. Dr. McGuire met them at the Children's Hospital on Monday morning. The pre-op exam confirmed Eli as a candidate. The first injection was performed on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. The second injection was performed 2 weeks later on Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. The recovery from each was monitored carefully. The bandages on Eli's eyes were removed in stages. On October 22, 2025, in a small exam room at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, with Dr. McGuire on one side of him and his mother kneeling directly in front of him, the final bandage on Eli's left eye was removed. The room was kept dim. Eli's eyes adjusted. He blinked. He blinked again. He looked at his hand for the first time in his life. He looked at his cane, which he had been holding. He looked up at the ceiling. He looked at Dr. McGuire's face. He looked at the wall. He looked at the floor. He looked at his shoes. He looked at the chair he was sitting on. Then he looked at his mother. He was quiet for a long moment. He did not cry. He did not smile right away. He just looked at her. His face went through something nobody in the room had ever seen on a child before. He looked at her forehead. He looked at her eyebrows. He looked at her cheekbones. He looked at her nose. He looked at her chin. He was matching what he saw to what he had mapped for 3 years. Danielle was holding her own breath. She did not say anything. She let him look. After a long moment, Eli said, "Mama." Danielle said, "Yes, baby." Eli said, "Your hair is brown." Danielle said, "Yes, baby." Eli said, "But your eyes are the color I thought yellow was." Danielle said, "Baby, my eyes are brown too." Eli said, "I know, Mama, but they look yellow to me, because of how you look at me." Danielle put her face in her son's small hands. She wept. Eli, 8 years old, who had never seen a tear before in his life, watched his mother cry for the first time. He used his thumbs to wipe her tears the way he had felt her wipe his tears for 8 years. He said, "Mama, don't cry. It's me. I can see you now. It's me." Dr. McGuire walked out of the room and into the hallway and stood with his back against the wall and cried for a long time. He had performed this procedure on over 400 children in his career. He had never gotten used to it. A year later, on September 9, 2026, the Whitfield family flew back to Atlanta for the first annual Eli's Window Foundation Gala. Eli was the keynote speaker. He was 9 years old. He walked onto the stage by himself, with no cane, in a small navy suit his mother had picked out with him at a department store the week before. He stood at the microphone. He looked out at 1,200 people, including parents of children with rare diseases who had been served by the foundation in the previous year, including Dr. McGuire in the front row, including Steve Harvey beside him, including Mia, who was 7 now and who waved at her brother and held up a stuffed dog she had brought along for moral support. Biscuit had a new ear. Mia had sewn it on herself. Eli looked at the audience. He saw them, all of them, every face. He took a breath. He said, "My name is Eli Whitfield. A year ago I asked Mr. Steve a question on his show. I asked him if I could see my mama's face one time. I have seen my mama's face every day for 360 days now. I look at her every morning when she makes my breakfast. I look at her every night when she reads me a story. I look at her when she doesn't know I'm looking. She has brown hair. She has brown eyes. She has a small scar on her chin from when she fell off a bike when she was 12. Mia has the same nose as Mama. I did not know that. I have seen the sun. I have seen yellow. Yellow is the best color. I was right about that part. I want to tell every kid out there who has not seen their mama, or their daddy, or their sister, or their dog, or their school, or the sun. I want you to know that there is a window. The window does not close on you. Mr. Steve told me that. There is somebody who will hold the window open. They are looking for you right now. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not too far away. Mama held me up to the window for 8 years. Mr. Steve opened it. Dr. McGuire walked me through it. Somebody is going to walk you through too. I promise. I am 9 years old and I promise. The room was crying. Steve was crying. Danielle was crying. Mia was crying and waving Biscuit at her brother. Dr. McGuire was crying. 1,200 people in a ballroom were crying. In a later interview with Robin Roberts, Steve was asked what he had learned from Eli Whitfield. Steve was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I learned what a child knows that a grown man forgets. A child knows that the most important thing they will ever see is the face of the person who loves them. Grown people forget. We get our eyes when we are born, and we use them on phones and on televisions and on bills and on traffic and on screens. And we forget that the only thing eyes were ever really for was the face of somebody who loves us." Eli did not waste his first sight. The first thing he looked at was his mother. The second thing he looked at was his sister. The third thing he looked at was his grandmother. I want every sighted person in this country to think about what they would do if they had 1 minute of sight after 8 years of blindness. Whose face would you look at? Now go look at that face today. Now, stop reading and go look. That is what Eli taught me. Danielle Whitfield kept her hotel job for 4 more months after the procedure, until the foundation's financial support allowed her to leave it. She is now a part-time advocate for Eli's Window in the Carolinas. She speaks at hospitals and insurance reform hearings. She tells her son's story at every appearance. She always ends the same way. She says, "My son mapped me with his hands for 3 years. He built a face for me out of touch because nobody would build him a face out of light. Every child waiting for a face deserves the light. Every parent waiting to be seen by their own child deserves it too. Don't make them map you with their hands. Give them their eyes." Somewhere tonight, there is a mother sitting at a kitchen table with a denial letter, opening it at midnight because she could not open it at dinner. Somewhere tonight, there is a child running small fingers across his mother's face in the dark, mapping her, memorizing her, because he does not know if he will ever see her any other way. Somewhere tonight, there is a sibling describing the world to a brother who cannot see it, doing the holy work of translation that children should never have to do. They do not know yet that another boy already walked across a stage and asked the question. They do not know yet that the window is being held open right now by people they have never met. But somebody is reading a denial letter at midnight for the last time tonight. Somebody else is going to read it for them tomorrow. Sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is ask for the one thing he has been afraid to ask for his entire life. Sometimes love is a mother holding still while her son maps her face for the last time before he sees it. Sometimes a window does not close on a child if a man on a stage decides to put his shoulder against it and hold it open until everybody who needs to walk through has walked through. If this story reached you, share it with a parent who is opening mail they don't want to open tonight, and subscribe. Because the next window somebody needs held open might be the one this video opens for them.